The winter of 1603 did not just fall upon the island of Izo. It crushed it. The wind that howled down from the jagged volcanic peaks of Mount Yotei was a physical force, a wall of razor-sharp ice crystals that stripped the bark from the pine trees and froze the blood of any animal foolish enough to leave its den. It was a land of silence, of white death, and of spirits that watched from the shadows of the ancient birch forests. But on this night, the silence was murdered. It began high in the upper atmosphere, a streak of burning crimson fire that tore the night sky asunder. It was not a meteor. It moved with intent, fighting the drag of the air, correcting its course with bursts of dying thrusters. It screamed over the village of Matsume, turning the night into a blood-red noon for a heartbeat, before slamming into the treacherous, frozen slopes of the mountain. The impact shook the island to its bedrock. An avalanche, miles wide, cascaded down the northern face, burying the ancient paths in a tomb of ice. Atsu, the woman they were beginning to call the ghost, watched the smoke rise from the ridge. She was miles away, huddled in a hunter's blind, her breath steaming in the frigid air. She adjusted the shamisen slung across her back, feeling the weight of the rifle against her shoulder. The Ainu elders had whispered of a star god falling from the heavens to judge the land. Atsu did not believe in gods that fell. She believed in threats, and she believed in hunting them. It took her 2 days to reach the crash site. The cold was unnatural here, a vacuum-like chill that seemed to suck the heat directly from her marrow. The trees surrounding the crater were not burned, they were flash-frozen, shattered into millions of diamond-like shards that littered the snow. In the center of the crater lay the vessel. It was a pod of crystal and silver metal, shaped like a teardrop, pulsing with a failing, rhythmic red light. It was empty. The hatch had been torn open from the inside. Atsu knelt in the snow, examining the tracks leading away. They were boot prints, but they were massive, sinking deep into the permafrost. The stride was long, heavy, and uneven. The creature was hurt. "It bleeds," Atsu whispered, touching a speck of blood on a jagged rock. It was red, bright, oxygen-rich red. "If it bleeds, I can kill it." She followed the trail up the mountain, toward the ruins of the Sun Shrine, an abandoned place of worship that hung precariously over a sheer drop, exposed to the brutal winds. She found him there. He was sitting on the steps of the ruined Torii gate, huddled against the stone for warmth. He was a titan of a man, broad-shouldered and thick-limbed, wearing a skin-tight suit of a strange, textured blue fabric that was torn in a dozen places. A cape, once a vibrant red, now hung in tatters from his shoulders, whipped violently by the wind. He was shivering. His skin was pale, almost translucent in the cold, and dark bruises bloomed across his jaw and ribs. He held a weapon in his hands, a long, jagged shard of the silver metal torn from his own ship. He had wrapped the base in strips of leather from the ship's seat to form a crude hilt. He was sharpening it against a stone, the rhythmic sh 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 sound lost in the wind. Atsu stepped out from the whiteout, her boots crunching softly on the snow. She unslung her rifle, the flintlock mechanism clicking as she primed it. "You are far from home, stranger," Atsu called out, her voice flat and deadly. The giant stopped sharpening his blade. He raised his head. His eyes were a piercing electric blue, but they were dim, clouded with exhaustion and pain. He looked at Atsu, then at the rifle. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a king who had lost his kingdom. The stranger rasped. His voice was deep, resonant, but cracked from dehydration. He spoke a language Atsu had never heard, a flowing, musical tongue. Then he tried again, forcing out a word in broken, archaic Japanese he must have picked up from a passing traveler. "Peace." "There is no peace here," Atsu replied, aiming the rifle at his chest. "You brought the fire from the sky. You brought the avalanche. You are a curse." The stranger, Kal-El of Krypton, slowly stood up. Under the red sun radiation of his dying life pod, and now under the weak winter sun of Ezo, his powers were gone. He felt the cold biting into his skin. He felt the ache in his bones. Gravity, once a suggestion, was now a heavy chain around his neck. But he was still the son of Jor-El. He was still trained in the martial arts of Krypton, Torquasm Rao, and Clercor. He raised the silver shard, adopting a defensive stance. It was not a samurai stance. It was something wider, grounded, alien. "I do not wish to fight," Kal-El said, his breath forming clouds. "Then you should not have come," Atsu said. She squeezed the trigger. Crack! The rifle roared, spitting fire and lead. The bullet flew true, aiming for the center of his chest. A week ago, the bullet would have flattened against his skin and fallen harmlessly to the ground. Today, it tore through the blue fabric and grazed his ribs, carving a furrow of flesh. Kal-El grunted, staggering back. The pain was shocking, white-hot and immediate. He clutched his side, looking at the blood on his hand. He was mortal. He was fragile. But fear did not take him. Focus did. "So be it," he whispered in Kryptonian. Atsu dropped the rifle and drew her katana. The steel hissed in the cold air. She charged. She moved like a wolf, low and fast, using the snowdrifts to hide her approach. She leaped, her blade flashing in a horizontal arc meant to hamstring the giant. Kal-El moved. He didn't have super speed, but he had reflexes honed by a lifetime of combat. He stepped into the attack, using his size to crowd her. He brought the silver shard down to parry. Clang! The sound was deafening. The alien metal, harder than anything on Earth, met the folded steel of the katana. The vibration traveled up Atsu's arm, numbing her fingers. She was thrown off balance by the sheer weight of his block. Kal-El didn't stop. He pivoted on his heel, swinging the shard in a heavy, downward chop. Atsu rolled to the side, the alien blade slicing through the snow where her head had been a fraction of a second before. The shard struck the frozen ground and sparked, carving a groove deep into the rock. Atsu sprang to her feet, circling him. He was strong, unnaturally strong even for a giant. But he was slow. The cold was slowing him down. "You fight like a machine," Atsu taunted, testing his guard. She lunged again, a flurry of strikes, slash, thrust, feint. Kal-El parried them all. Cling, clang, cling. He fought with a grim economy of motion. He didn't waste energy. He used the flat of his blade to deflect, the pommel to strike. He caught Atsu with a backhand to the face. The impact sent Atsu sprawling into a snowbank. She tasted blood. Her mask was cracked. She scrambled up, spitting red slush. "Good," Atsu hissed, wiping her mouth. "You can dance." She reached into her belt and threw a smoke bomb. Poof! A cloud of gray, choking smoke filled the shrine courtyard. Atsu vanished into the mist. This was her domain. She moved silently, listening for his breathing. Kal-El stood in the center of the smoke. His super hearing was gone. His X-ray vision was a memory. He was blind. He closed his eyes, forcing his mind to quiet. He listened to the displacement of the air. He felt the vibration of footsteps in the ice. Left. He spun, swinging the shard blindly to his left. Atsu ducked under the swing, her katana carving a line across his thigh. Kal-El roared in pain, dropping to one knee. The cut was deep. His leg gave out. Atsu emerged from the smoke, raising her sword for the finishing blow. "Sleep, giant." She brought the blade down. But Kal-El was not done. He caught the blade. With his bare hand, he grabbed the sharp edge of the katana. The steel sliced into his palm, blood streaming down his arm. But he didn't let go. He squeezed. Atsu's eyes went wide. "What are you?" Kal-El looked up, his eyes burning with a desperate fire. He twisted his hips and swept Atsu's legs with his good leg. Atsu fell hard, the breath leaving her lungs. Kal-El wrenched the katana from her grip and tossed it into the snow. He stood up, limping, blood dripping from his hand and leg. He pointed the silver shard at her throat. They froze there. The wind howled around them. Atsu lay in the snow, disarmed. The giant stood over her, bleeding, broken, but victorious. He could have killed her. It would have been easy. A single thrust. But he hesitated. He looked at the woman. He saw the fear in her eyes, masked by defiance. He saw a protector fighting for her home. Kal-El slowly lowered the weapon. He stepped back, grimacing as he put weight on his injured leg. "I am not your enemy," he rasped, the words difficult. Atsu sat up, confusion warring with adrenaline. "You defeated me. Why do you not finish it?" "Because," Kal-El said, looking at the gray sky, "death is easy. Life is hard." He turned away from her, limping toward the edge of the cliff. He looked out over the frozen valley, at the village in the distance. He saw the smoke rising from the chimneys. He saw life. "I need to go," he said. Suddenly the mountain groaned. The vibrations of their battle had loosened the ice sheet above the shrine. A crack, loud as a cannon shot, echoed through the valley. Atsu looked up. Avalanche! It was a wall of white death, tons of ice and snow plummeting toward them. Atsu scrambled for cover, but there was nowhere to go. The shrine was exposed. She curled into a ball, bracing for the end. She felt a shadow fall over her. Kal-El didn't run. He didn't hide. He stepped between Atsu and the falling mountain. He planted his feet. He dropped his weapon. He raised his hands to the sky. He roared. It was a sound of pure, primal defiance. He channeled every ounce of solar energy left in his cells, every drop of adrenaline. The avalanche hit him. It should have crushed him into paste. It should have swept them both off the cliff. But the snow parted. Kal-El stood like a breakwater against the tide. He punched the avalanche. He caught the massive slabs of ice and threw them aside. He became a living shield, his body taking the impact that would have killed 100 men. For 30 seconds, the world was white noise and violence. And then, silence. Atsu opened her eyes. She was alive. She was untouched. In front of her, Kal-El was on his knees. He was buried up to his waist in snow. He was bruised, battered, and shivering uncontrollably. He had nothing left. He slumped forward, unconscious, face down in the snow. Atsu stared at him. The monster, the invader, the man who had just saved her life. She stood up. She retrieved her katana. She walked over to the fallen giant. She could end it now. He was helpless. She looked at his back, at the tattered red cape. "You are a fool," Atsu whispered. She sheathed her sword. Atsu knelt beside him. She pulled him from the snow. He was impossibly heavy, dense like lead. She dragged him into the shelter of the remaining shrine walls. She gathered wood and started a fire. She used her own healing salves on his wounds. She sat with him through the night, watching the rise and fall of his chest. When dawn broke, the storm had cleared. The sun rose over Mount Yotei, brilliant and gold. Kal-El opened his eyes. He took a deep breath. The sunlight hit his skin. It wasn't a full recharge. The yellow sun was weak in winter, but it was enough. The cuts on his face stopped bleeding. His strength returned, humming in his veins like a low-voltage current. He sat up. He looked at Atsu, who was cleaning her rifle on the other side of the fire. "You stayed," he said. His voice was stronger now. "You saved me," Atsu replied without looking up. "A debt is a debt." Kal-El stood up. He walked to the edge of the cliff. He felt the gravity loosening its grip. He felt the sky calling him. He turned to Atsu. He reached into his belt and pulled out the silver shard, the weapon he had forged from his ship. He stuck it into the ground. "Keep it," he said. "Metal from the stars. It will never break." Atsu looked at the shining metal. She nodded. "Go, before I change my mind." Kal-El smiled. He crouched low. Boom! He launched himself into the air. The snow around him vaporized. He shot upward like a rocket, breaking the sound barrier, soaring higher and higher until he was just a speck against the blue sky. Atsu watched him go. She walked over to the silver shard. She pulled it from the earth. It was light, perfectly balanced, and sharper than anything she had ever held. She strapped it to her back, next to her katana. The ghost of Yotei turned back to the mountain path. The winter was still cold. The wind was still biting. But she was no longer hunting. She had met a god, fought him to a standstill, and watched him fly. The world was changing, and the ghost would be ready.